Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you doing today? Audio? Check. Lighting? Getting better. Camera? Changed today. I was able to finally a part I needed to get our DSLR camera hooked up. And I was working with that yesterday, and I am pleased. It's a much better picture. Let me know what you think. You can actually make out what stuff says, and you can actually make out my background. It was all washed out before. So hopefully you enjoy the new camera, the crisper image. And yeah, hopefully it works out. Shout out to anybody who knows how to configure and set up a DSLR. I don't know how to do the ISOs and all that kind of stuff. So if any of my viewers know how to configure a camera like this, it's a Nikon D5100. So if you know what settings I should be using to make it have the best picture possible, hook up with me. I can certainly use a little bit of help with that. But for now, here we go. We can see me. I'm not too washed out, not too much light. I think it's looking better, everybody. So thank you for bearing with me on that one. How are you all doing? We had some early birds today. Early bird. True North. Dude, I think we are brothers from another mother. I watched your Pickering video yesterday. It's good. It's good. You're a brave soul. Nothing intimidates you. That was pretty cool, man. Glad to hear that you're doing other things. So as you mentioned in my chat, right here, brother, you were just loading your tools into work just in time for the show. I did some work yesterday for some concerned parents that were banned from school board meetings with Rebel News. True North, there's no more slots available this week, but there's some available next week. So if you want to come onto the show, we can talk about your work, how you're an auditor for the authorities around here, the police, how you're doing work around the Pickering area. I'd be happy to have you on the show. So if that's something that you're into, go ahead and mention it in the chat, or reach out to me on Twitter, maybe. We'll connect. Good morning, brother. Alexandria, Mayor of Alexandria. Good to see you. Missed you, I think, the last day or so, but glad you're back, Scott. Good to see you, brother. You could catch up on the other videos. Monday with Tom Marazzo, and Tuesday was Government Corrupt, a Twitter user who's really doing a lot of good work when it comes to exposing and highlighting the corruption and hypocrisy of our government. Reminder, today's episode is going to have Zach Schmidt. He's the host of the Schmidt House Podcast out of Saskatchewan. He'll be joining us in about 12 minutes. And True North, Scott is the de facto mayor of Alexandria, Ontario. So Scott, if you have anything going on with the police, reach out to True North. Maybe he can help you expose some of it or teach you the tools. And then good morning, True North. Great to see you again. Thank you very much, Patch. Azario, he's here bright and early. It's very chilly here. Okay, we woke up to like 3 degrees, just over 3 degrees. But here's our sunrise. We got sun now. Our sky is clearing up. The smoke is going away. We don't have the smell of it anymore. So we definitely are recovering back to normal here in Alberta. Oh, look at that Padge saying hi to Scott and Azario. We also have Prairie. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, Prairie. How are you? How are you? I'm looking forward to doing that dimming episode. Since I've watched it, I'm still doing some stuff, thinking about things for you. I'll be doing that episode. I would like to announce, though, that there's a special episode tomorrow. So tomorrow I had it scheduled. It will be about the Alberta debate. We'll see if Padge is ready or not to be able to be part of that. But it's going to be an extended episode because we're going to tack an extra hour on. So it's going to be 3 hours tomorrow because we have a special guest. So Tim Ode, Libertarian Party leader. Kevin mentioned to him yesterday how he voted for him. It was his first vote at 18 was to vote for Tim. So I reached out to Tim on Twitter, bada boom, bada bing. He doesn't have availability earlier than the end of our show, so we tacked on an hour for him. So stick around for tomorrow. We'll be talking to Tim from the Libertarian Party, and we'll go over the Alberta election, its impact on Canada on a federal level, and yeah, it should be a good time. So the first 2 hours will be me with maybe Padge, maybe Andy Lee. There's a couple of people who said they may be able to be part of the show. But then the extended hour, the extra hour, is going to be with Tim. And I believe I just got a graphic for this. Let me see. Maybe not. I may have to refresh, and I don't want to refresh live. So that's all good. But yeah, tune in for tomorrow. It'll be a 3-hour episode. Hope that's not too much, Jay, for you in the morning. And then we got Ozario saying good morning to Padge. Cool. Look at that. Padge is getting a bunch of love. Sunflower too. And then here we go, Clay. I saw you coming up, so I held back. Here's my coffee. Good morning, Clay. Thanks for all that love and support on Twitter as well. Any of you not on Twitter? It's okay now. I'm on it. Come hang out. It's getting a lot more action. It's getting a lot more fun. Oh, right on. So True North. Okay, cool. Jason at Levine.vote. You can go to, no, sorry, I got that wrong. Jason at Yellowhead.vote. You can go to Yellowhead.vote for my website, and there's a contact me there as well. But hit me up, True North. Let's get this going. See if you're available for maybe Tuesday. Monday's the election. It's going to be a late night. Maybe make it Thursday. If you're available Thursday, we might do that. Okay, True North. Good morning, Jason, everyone. Welcome, Motown, my pen pal. Nice to see you. Hope you're having a great morning. Hope Calgary is clearing up just like we are. I hope, And Motown, I did a poll on my Twitter this morning. Why are you voting in the election? Is it because you like Danielle? Is it because you don't like Danielle? So in other words, you don't like Notley, but you really don't like Danielle. Or you like Notley, or you don't like Notley. You really don't like Notley, but you're not a big fan of Danielle, but you really don't like Notley. So let us know how you're going to vote. So far, we have a strong support for Danielle and no support for Notley. So it's interesting to hear what the real polls might show. The mayor was on vacation. I hope that didn't lead to a scandal there, Mayor. Hope you had a good time, though. Always willing to learn. Cool. True North. Well, I think what I meant there is you can teach Scott. I think Scott would love to learn from you too. True North. True North. If you haven't, okay, I got a book. Check it out. I did a whole episode on it last week, Bearing Witness. Thank you, Ellie. Let me just get this off there. The book isn't available for order yet, but it will be soon. The graphic came before the order link. But True North, check it out, because what it's about is exactly what you're doing. It's about using your technology, going to places, how you can be a witness, what you should be witnessing, how you can work with the authorities, et cetera, et cetera. If you join my Discord, Azario, if you don't mind, put the Discord in the chat. True North, go to Discord and you can find a copy of the book, and you can go ahead and start reading pre-release. I think you would like it. I think it would assist you in teaching the people how to become better witnesses when it comes to exactly what you're doing. How you can go to the place, take video, what you can do with it, the purpose of your journeys, capturing it legally, et cetera, et cetera. So check it out. I haven't published it yet, so maybe if you like it, you can give me a comment, and maybe I can put that comment in the back cover or something. I got about a week before I can do that. So let me know there, True North. I watched True North, love him. Yeah, Scott, he's pretty cool. Out of Pickering, he went to the library. They tried to get him to leave. He was there to film some historical room. Progressively, they were violating his rights to the point where it was ultimately the threat of have a good day with your rights violated or go to jail. So he took the former. No reason to go to jail. Good morning, all. From Ali. Thanks, buddy. Prairie. I'm working on transcribing a video for an auditor's court case. Been up all night. You're a transcriber, Prairie? Or are you just helping out like a volunteer? That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. One trick you can do, Prairie, is upload the video to YouTube. You can keep it private, but you can turn on automatic transcribing, and that will give you at least a starting version, and then something you can go through and edit and clean up their mistakes on. It might be an easy way to get a good transcript out of a video and get you started. But I didn't know you did that. Congrats. Just about to put the finishing touches and hope I can send it all. Well, it sounds like you're already ready to finish up. Good job. Good job, Prairie. I'm not on Twitter. Well, that's Twitter's loss, Prairie, because if you're not there, we're not getting the full story. So if you do find yourself there, Jason Levine MP, like everywhere else, my username's right there. So like everywhere else, you can go ahead and find me online and come follow me, give me some love. It would be great. And I see our guest has arrived a little bit early, which is wonderful. So in a moment, I'll be bringing him on. Hi, nice to see you, Zach. Looks like your video is great. Neither am I, Scott. That's awesome, buddy. And we got Prairie. I have his email, true. Awesome. And Prairie, you hooked us all up. You made all happen. So thank you very much. And now I can now feel and know that the sun's coming in very bright here. So if that is, look at that. If I could just block this window. So if Padge is listening, there's a cardboard inside the trailer. If you can help me reach it, I think I can solve this light from my left issue. So you might see a cardboard fly across my screen shortly. All right, Padge. Folks, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep commenting and all that. Allie, let's see some graphics. Go ahead, Allie. Yeah, Paula has placed the order in. I usually listen to her when she speaks. So go ahead and from time to time, you can drop up the graphics. Thank you, Allie. Especially during the interview. I'm pretty focused on the interview. Okay, from Prairie. Thank you, True North. My boss called. Who's your boss? Trudeau? Who's your boss? I'm looking forward to getting to know you there, True North. Prairie, I think I sent you a link on that book, True North. Oh, cool. So yeah, do let me know what you think. Any comments would be great, especially around using your mobile device and other stuff as part of the capturing of witnessing. All right, my admin assistant has arrived. Yeah, let's try that shorter one first. See? Bush League, cardboard. Oh, the perfect height. Lighting issue solved. Just like that. Thank you, Patch. It's perfect. How does it look from your side? Okay, so that looks better to me. I don't have a big shine on my face. I would have a half farmer's tan if this was our setup, right? Perry, I'll have to get that to you again. No worries. And then here's Azario providing the Discord link. So True North even joined that. There's a lot of fun stuff there. Oh, you volunteer, Prairie. That's pretty cool. I hope you're on my Discord as well, Prairie. That's where we do hang out and volunteer stuff and help each other. So if that's something you want to do with me, you can join the Discord. Oh, that I've done it is missing lots on the YouTube transcription. Oh, that I've done. It's missing. Yeah, of course, YouTube's not perfect. It's just a starting point. It's just to get you some of the meat and potatoes. But yeah, that was a bit of a suggestion. Oh, we're almost done and we're about to bring our guest on. So I'm a sheet metal worker during the day, journalist by night. Isn't that the case? A lot of us have day jobs. I'm a journalist in the morning and then a homesteader / software developer during the day. And I'm looking forward to sharing my project with you all soon. It's coming up. Nice. So Scott's happy. That's cool. And Trudeau's boss. Yeah, of course. Is he? Nah, not Trudeau's. And I really like to work, bro. That's good stuff. That's good stuff there, Scott. That's why you'll be mayor one day. Well, without further ado, I am very, very pleased that I can bring on this next guest. He is a podcaster in Saskatchewan, my old stomping ground. Maybe some of you don't know, but I am from born in northern Manitoba, but I spent the first chunk of my years in Saskatoon. So I'm very pleased to have stumbled across a fellow YouTuber who's also Saskatchewanite. Good morning, Zach. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. How's my volume levels here?
Your volume is good. I might put you down just a tad.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, it's good. It's good to meet you. We've been talking for a little bit, so I'm excited to be on. I've watched a couple episodes, and the one that you did with Kevin the other day was unreal. I had him on recently too, and we had a really good conversation. I think we'll probably hit on, I think, lots of some of the similar topics this morning. So you might get a little bit of repeat topics, but it'll be good.
Awesome, awesome. And some of the topics that I couldn't touch on with Kevin that I'd love to touch with you on would be gun rights. We can talk about
Mhm.
property rights.
Sure.
We can talk about podcasting, how you're doing it. We can also talk about why you're doing that. Because I spoke to Kevin a little bit offline yesterday about he should be podcasting. Like, I think he should be doing something.
He's a very smart guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he can keep an audience and he can do it for at least an hour. So he'll be joining us for half an hour starting in June every Wednesday for half an hour to
Oh,
give
cool.
us an update. Yeah, and I think encouraging people like him after they especially did so well on your show to also follow through with podcasting, because I believe podcasting is a good way to kind of get our message out. And I think you think the same thing, because here you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go ahead and everybody knows who I am, but let's introduce you. How did you get into? Well, let's go before the podcast and like, who are you? Let's start there.
Well, I've kind of had a lot of different roles. Out of high school, I eventually made my way to play on the Saskatoon Hilltops, actually. So your old stomping grounds, I guess. I played 3 years at the Saskatoon Hilltops, won 3 national titles with them. Had an awesome time doing that. Played 1 year with the University of Regina Rams. Finished my degree off. I have a split major in business and economics. That's why it's something that I'm really passionate about. I was really, really interested in economics throughout high school and eventually getting into it in university. So finished that off, spent some time in the personal finance sector, real estate sector, and now I've kind of transitioned more to being a full-time dad, and I run a small business doing some bookwork and accounting and that type of stuff. And that way I can be home full time with my kids. It was a very important thing for my wife and I. Um, for a long time, what I saw lots of people having parents go through the daycare system and stuff like that, and basically never seeing their kids, never raising their kids. So I didn't want to be that way. I wanted to raise my kids, so it's very important. We made some sacrifices, moved out of the city, so we're in a small town in Saskatchewan, and really decided that we wanted to have a parent home full time. And so we decided that one would be me, and it's been really good. So my wife is just finishing up mat leave, so she'll be returning to work. I'll be returning to basically full time raising my kids, which is absolutely super rewarding. Everyone says you don't get that time back, and it's completely true. Um,
Mhm.
and then we're going to be doing homeschooling as well. So that's kind of like me personally, as far as like personal life goes. Podcasting was something I actually wanted to get into back in 2018. I just never did it. It wasn't the right timing that way, and I was kind of just maybe a little bit nervous or hesitant. But it was something that I kind of I kept all of the graphics. I mean, Schmidt House Podcast was kind of like a working title, but it ended up working because I figured that I wanted to make a show for me. I wanted to make a show that I wanted to watch. I didn't want to be pigeonholed into one thing where you're only talking about, movie and TV show reviews, or you're only talking about philosophy or politics or whatever the case may be. So I didn't want to be pigeonholed to a single topic.
Mhm.
So that's why it was like it's whatever comes on my mind is what comes out on the show. So back in things were just getting crazy. So back in 2021, I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. So I started a podcast in the fall of 2021, and I'm like, you know what, I'll make one episode a month, and that turned into an episode a week, and that's kind of where it's gone. I'm usually hitting between the stuff that I do exclusive on Rumble. I'm usually doing about 6 episodes a month. So that's kind of what I have time for, just with 2 crazy kids and work and all of that type of stuff. So but I comment on, I don't want it to be overtly political, so I do try to get in some pop culture stuff. I'm currently, it's taken a while, is getting through the Lord of the Rings and doing a book and movie review on that series. But I do talk a lot about politics. It's something that I am passionate about. It's something I've been awake for a long time about, like the truth of what's going on. I often tell people I started watching Alex Jones when I was around 14 years old, so I was indoctrinated really early into that type of mentality, and it kind of comes through in my show and the topics that I try to talk about. it's realistically, when we're seeing the things that are going on right now, every single day is getting more crazy and crazy and crazy. And it's something that I don't think a lot of people are willing to put their neck on the line and actually go out there and talk about. So when I'm bringing up these topics, it's like that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give strength to the people that, maybe are a little bit hesitant to actually have a voice and be able to speak out, because it is hard. We're going up against a huge establishment that has an infinite amount of resources at their beck and call, and us freedom fighters really don't. So I have this theory that if you start speaking out, you're going to give strength to that person to start doing it as well, whether they use your voice to do that or their own. And I think that's kind of where it's gone. Like I said, I don't want to make my show overtly political, but that ends up to
Mhm.
being a lot about what I'm talking about.
I have the very, very similar journey of what you just explained there. I stay home as well. We take care of the kids. We are homeschooling. We are homesteading. We left Eastern Alberta, packed up, threw everything into a trailer, sold everything else, and moved. And would never change that. That has been one of the best things we've ever did. And then similar to you, I wasn't finding a voice out there that I would enjoy. There's a lot of loud ones, louder sometimes is fun. There's a lot of very energetic ones, and then there's a lot that you just can't have your kids around or play in the shop. It's more for daddy and mommy only. And I'm also an early bird, and I needed to continue to work. So I had to kind of fit all of that together, and that's what led to me to a really early show. So by 8 a.m., I'm kind of wrapping up and moving on with the rest of my day. So I'm very, very impressed that there are people like you out there who are doing similar things because they believe that their voice can add to the conversation in Canada. And when I came across you, immediately I was attracted to your show. You had a good demeanor. Your backdrop tells us who you are. You definitely are working towards the same goals that we are, which is a much better Canada, similar to what we grew up in. True freedom, not perceived freedom, that kind of stuff. So I'm very, very pleased to have met you. Now, I do want to pick your brain because I see that your podcast is on Apple Podcast and other places. I haven't done that yet. So why don't you go ahead and tell people like us who are just grabbing a camera, throwing a computer together, and have very limited funds, how to
Mhm.
go about syndicating your show? How did you go about getting it into all the different places you have it at?
Well, to be honest, it's actually kind of easier than lots of people think. And you can do it on a very limited budget. You can pick up cheap mics for, you know, $30 on Amazon, and that's pretty much all you need to get going. Um, I've in there are some technology upgrades that I obviously made since starting. I still am using basically my webcam just on my MacBook. I have a Focusrite Scarlett 2, which allows me to like interface to be able to adjust my volume levels and things like that, which helped a lot because when you have a cheap setup, you do have kind of a cheap production.
Mhm.
Um, I started off not even doing video. I worked that in about I started doing that about 8 months in. So I just that's basically how I approached everything. I said on my opening episode, I'm probably gonna suck most of the time, but sucking is the first step of being somewhat good at something, right? So
Right.
that's kind of like my focus when I'm doing it. I'm like, I just want to like playing football. As everyone says, you're only as good as the last game tape you send out, and I kind of view podcasting as the same. Every single episode, I want to get better. I want to learn something how to make it better. Because I really had no training, no background, no nothing in this. I just wanted to do it. I wanted to talk about things that I enjoy. So putting that out there. But I mean, you can honestly start a cheap mic on Amazon. If you have a half decent computer, you can do it. And then as far as being able to get it syndicated on those platforms, there's tons there of different things. I use Buzzsprout. Um,
Buzzsprout.
on a
Okay.
free version, you can do 2 hours a month, but it deletes the episodes after 30 days. And then I think it's about $15 per month. Then you can upgrade that to like three. So there's different payment plans, but there's tons of others. There's Podbean, Anchor that will do virtually the same thing. You're just nitpicking how much storage you're going to get and how long they're going to keep episodes up and the amount that you're actually able to upload. Um, you could go a little bit more intense. You can start doing it. You'd have to have like your own website, your own storage, your being able to have an RSS feed to be able to push it. So using one of those sites is very convenient if you're starting out. I'm looking to change a couple of things up. This is a different strategy for everybody. I've got annoyed with YouTube. I've had a couple episodes pulled. I've had episodes that I have intentionally not uploaded just based on the content that I was going to be talking about.
Right.
That's why I push everybody to Rumble. Rumble, realistically, if you want to keep it completely free, be monetized essentially right from the start, Rumble is a good way to go. It does take a little bit more while to get traction. Not everybody's there. YouTube is the place where most people go. So as far as like even my listener share, I'm getting, I would say, about 90% on Rumble. I'm usually getting my lowest viewership is actually on YouTube comparatively. And then those other ones, between all of them, I'm usually getting about 30 views average per episode, 25 to 30 per episode between Apple, Spotify, all of those things. Rumble, on average, I'm getting about 80 to 100, sometimes more depending if I have a guest. I had Maxime Bernier on. I did a live stream covering Maxime recently. Those ones are closer to 1,000. So it really depends on content that you're talking about as far as views that you're going to get. But YouTube, I'm so throttled on there. I don't even care about it anymore at this point. I'm really just doubling down on Rumble. So there's ways that you could do it for really, really cheap. There's ways that you can step up your game and make your you have a separate camera. I'm still using my webcam. So there's ways that you can piece it together and really make it your own. And I think that's kind of the joy. The one thing that I've noticed in the last little bit is I've wanted to have more guests on, and I've wanted to do more guest spots. So I really do appreciate you having me on, because it helps you grow your audience. And if you're struggling, kind of hit a wall with, say, like your family and friends, which I have some good friends, loyal listeners. None of my family watch because I'm kind of the black sheep. Nobody really gives me the time of day, especially when you start talking about the content that I know you want to keep it PG, but the content that I talk about, definitely throws some people off. So once you kind of hit a wall, maybe that way, it's definitely good to kind of branch out, talk to other people. Most podcasts are definitely open to talking with other people, because we understand kind of the whole networking and how it all is. So.
Yeah, for sure. And Kevin said something similar. He's a black sheep of his family. The more he talks about stuff, the more he's going to push back as well. And for my viewers, PG on this show means pretty good. The only thing is profanity. I have a 6 and an 8-year-old that watch the show, but we certainly go into deep conversations.
Yeah, well, the stuff I talk about is definitely not appropriate for them either. So yeah,
well, we'll see.
Yeah,
If,
there's something I really I had Billboard Chris on close to a year ago. And I was aware of lots of the stuff that he's been talking about when it comes to this gender ideology. But it was really talking with him where I got activated so much more to where I said, I'm not going to let this stuff stand. I look at my kids, and the worst thing that I'd ever want to hear out of their mouth is, Daddy, why didn't you fight harder for me? And there's some bad actors. There's some very evil people in this world that want to do bad things, especially to kids. And I'm done. I'm not having conversations that are going to be any level of protection for those people. And so when I'm talking about like that type of content, I get into the weeds on some of that stuff on lots of my episodes, and I don't pull punches on whoever I'm going to be talking about when it comes to that topic. I think the children are our future, and if we're not willing to step up and do the right thing and actually protect them now, we're done. That's it.
Well, do me a favor and check out my episode from last week on bearing witness, and let's see if we can talk about that, because I'm trying to get a movement going to educate and empower witnesses across Canada to go to things like story time, witness it, make it, if there's anything illegal going on, we have a chance to do something about it, make it uncomfortable for the performer, because there's witnesses there that are not enablers. Anyways, if you check out the last episode, I think you and I are on the same wavelength where we need to protect our children. We're not willing to just talk about it, and we want to do something about it. So check out my episode from last week on bearing witness and let me know what you think. Maybe there's something we can do to work together to empower witnesses to go ahead and show up at these events and do what a witness should do. And that is to capture the truth. And if there is some actionable items and things that are happening, capture it and report it and see where we can go with it. So let me know what you think about that. I know it's a grassroots effort. Witnessing in today's society is almost a derogatory term. witnesses get stitches, that kind of stuff. But I think that's what we're missing here in order to combat the evil, because evil doesn't like to be seen. So I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah,
Anyways,
the biggest weapon that you have in today's age is your cell phone. Go to those events, start recording it, record the conversations that these people are trying to have in private rooms. I'm connected with a group here in Saskatchewan that has been going to some of the school board meetings, and they actually got
wonderful.
forced out by a mob of these woke people. They locked the door and then continued the meeting once they kicked all of these freedom fighters out and continued their school board meeting with these woke lunatics behind closed doors.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's part of the challenge is if you show up as a freedom fighter, you're going to become an adversary to them immediately. If you show up as a witness and you can maintain the witness role, it becomes a little bit more difficult for them to exclude you because your entire purpose is to witness, not to protest.
Hmm.
And I cover that in my book, because if your role is to be a protester, which we need, and we need lots of them, that's great. But that's the role of a protester. If your role is to be a witness for that day, it's a different role.
Hmm.
It's a neutral role. It's meant to allow all sides to be aware that you're going to be there to watch. We know what's going on, but I think it's important that witnesses can go in there and be neutral and capture, or else they're just going to be capturing the outside of the building, which doesn't help at all.
Hmm.
So I go into that a bit in the book and in that episode, and let me know what you think. See if it will be
Yeah,
something
for
that can
sure.
help. Wonderful. So my producer here, Ellie, which is, I should tell you about him. He's amazing. Couple bucks, and he is doing so much for me. I don't know if you have one, but it's helpful.
Mhm.
He's reminding me that we're going to move on to your podcast a bit more. So
Okay,
we
sure.
talked, yeah, we talked about how you got into stuff a bit, and we talked about like the technical parts of podcasting. Now let's talk about where you're going with it. Where do you want this podcast to be? Do you want it to be on everybody's iPad or iPod or whatever? Or are you just trying to get the voice for Saskatchewan out and do something for Saskatchewan?
I definitely feel that a local focus is important. I talk about that aspect lots. I I truthfully like I don't really have any goals. I think one day being able to be a full-time job, being able to produce stuff daily, being able to do stuff, I think that that would be for sure enjoyable because I really do like what I'm doing. Um, but I never had any goals to make it the next Joe Rogan experience or anything like that. I think as long as people are willing to listen and enjoying the stuff that I'm putting out, like I said, I made this show for me. The fact that
Mhm.
I in the last it would be 18 months or so, I've been able to have close to 300 followers on Rumble was more than I would have anticipated, honestly. Um, the stuff that I've been able to accomplish, the things that I've been able to talk about, the conversations that I've been able to have with people, just and it's opened so many doors. So I don't really I have like an end goal in sight. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. And it's kind of one of those things. If you build it, they will come. If
Mhm.
one day it reaches 10,000 followers or even 250,000, like at that point, it's a different conversation on the direction that I want to take the show, but I will be consistent in the stuff that I want to put out because like I said, this show's for me. It has a
Mhm.
little bit of something for everybody. Might not agree with me on everything, and that's okay. I'm not ever trying to force my opinions or thoughts and beliefs on someone else. I'm just trying to present information. That type of strategy is for the mainstream media.
Yeah, I like how you put that. If you want to have an agenda and a script, we already have a system for that. If you want to have
Hmm.
unscripted and honesty, you come to these podcasts. Now, C11, okay, we all are annoyed with it. It got some censorship, especially if you're trying to reach other markets or come from other markets to Canada. But it may assist your show by promoting Canadian content like ours. So, what is your opinion? Like, I know you probably don't like the fact that the government's doing that, but for people like us, that might give us a small advantage. So, what do you think about that?
Uh, I don't think it's gonna give, any show like mine an advantage. As soon as you start speaking out against the government and they start, looking at your content, I think they're gonna put the kibosh on that. The what basically is happening with Bill C-11 is the government is gonna be able to decide what Canadian content, what Canadian culture is. A straight white male that believes that the government shouldn't be involved in our lives is not going to be put on the front page of YouTube just because I'm a smaller channel and they're trying to promote me. That's not what's going to happen. What is going to happen is, whoever's going to win the oppression Olympics and has a podcast, they're going to be put on the front page. They're going to be the ones that are simping for the government. Those are the people that are going to get the advantage in this. I think my show will, like I said, I'm already throttled quite a bit on YouTube. Stuff like that is just going to continue to happen. Even, alternative tech, new tech, whatever you want to call it, such as Rumble or Odyssey, DLive, all of these other YouTube competitors, they're going to meet the same fate. It's going to be algorithm manipulation to be able to remove the dissident voices. And I think there's lots of I'm not sure if you've ever checked out Raging Dissident, Jeremy McKenzie or anything.
Oh yes,
Diagonal. Okay, yeah.
Oh yes.
His channel is going to be.
I'm in contact with him and trying to get him on the show.
That would be awesome. Like Jeremy.
He's very quiet right now, though.
Jeremy should be running Canada, honestly. But we would be at definitely a better place. But you're going to see his channel pretty much deleted overnight with Bill C-11, right? And anybody that is mirroring that type of mentality, I think, will be throttled, not propped up.
So you really think they're going to go lock and step with the Canadian government? Google, you think they're going to do that? Because currently,
they have no choice. I know even Facebook has said that they're against this, but realistically, what we've seen with and if you study history, authoritarianism only heads in one direction, right? What Joseph Goebbels did in Germany and the way that he was able to manipulate people to do some heinous things, I see our Canadian government heading in that same direction. Might not necessarily mean to have the death toll, but the control and the manipulation and the power of that government is for sure on the table for what they want to do. Same thing with Soviet era Russia, right? Controlling people's minds. Kevin talked about it on my show and your show, Yuri Bezmenov. If you watch things from Yuri Bezmenov, he basically outlines everything perfectly on what is going on in the mass manipulation. So I'm really hard pressed to think that is going to have any benefit to small creators that have dissident voices. And I have not a large dissident voice, but I have a dissident voice.
Well, there might be a small window where
I'd agree. There might be like a small window where it's kind of flying under the radar, but as soon as they kind of figure out what's going on, I think it's kind of.
Well, I was actually going to go a little bit more malicious from the Google side. There might be a small window where they fight back a bit and start putting people like us forward and make the Canadian government take a different stand. I don't know, but I know that they don't want to do what the Canadian government is asking for, and I don't know how much power the Canadian government really will have on YouTube other than shutting them off. Do like a Chinese firewall, start shutting off the entire website. I don't know, but I think there might be a little window where there might be a rebellion out of Google where they will push us for a bit until it frustrates them so much.
I could get behind that theory. One pushback that I would say is, despite YouTube and Google specifically standing up and speaking out against this, which they have from the start, for some odd reason, like the kings of censorship online with Google and YouTube are fighting against censorship. It's kind of odd, but
they're fighting over who has the control of censorship.
Yeah, they want control of the algorithms, but realistically, what I see is Canada's not that large of a market share in comparison to the United States. If this was happening in the United States, they would make a lot bigger stink. And I think they do have something similar kind of being pushed through with the Biden administration. But yeah, I think you're right. There might be a little bit of pushback, but realistically, the government could have government tube. And that's the next thing. That's the only place that you can post on. If you see totalitarianism and communism, which is the direction that we're heading, the state just takes over everything. So they'll either come up with their own or just overtake some smaller thing, and then that's what you have to use, right? The CBC is a perfect example. If you look at the way that they're running, imagine having an online YouTube version of the CBC. That's what we're basically going to head towards.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they actually do it, get the audience over, et cetera, et cetera. Are you on Starlink or are you on a
No, I have SaskTel, which I've looked at Starlink. The price is attractive. The monthly
$200
cost,
right now.
yeah, that's for their infrastructure and stuff like that, their hardware.
The Yeah, the
The
Gen 2. Yeah.
monthly cost is something I'm not too enthused about. However, it would give me about 10 times faster internet
Mhm.
than I have currently, so I just don't think it's worth triple the cost per month. So,
Well, where
yeah.
I enjoy it, I don't have a choice. It looks like your stream is decent, so you have some good internet for you. I don't have a choice. There's no physical line. But what I did like was when all other Canadian providers were forced to remove Russia news from their, or RN from their streams, from their providing, Starlink was the one that said no.
Mhm.
So I'm curious if Starlink is going to be one fight that the Canadian government needs to fight as well. Being satellite based, they can't like block it. They might say you're not allowed to, but
Mhm.
Elon doesn't seem to be the type that takes orders from Canadian government. So maybe as a backup, you might want to consider getting one of them, and then maybe that can make sure that your show stays
Yeah,
online.
it's kind of ironic. Once Starlink came out with their attractive pricing, like a month prior, we had signed a 2-year contract, so I don't want to have to pay that out just to get Starlink. But yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a very smart move. Everybody that I know that has it just swears by it, so
Yeah,
could
we
be a good
ordered the Gen
alternative.
2 because we have the Gen 1 and Gen 2 is far better. So we've ordered that one. But anyways, that might be a way to keep your show online if C11 gets very aggressive and starts actually hitting our ISPs. Because one way for Canada to control the content may not be through YouTube, it may be through the ISPs, so we can't even upload.
Hmm.
Canadians might not be able to get to the YouTube URL that allows uploading. Who knows? But that's where I think Starlink might be able to assist if it actually gets that bad. Because I don't think you're wrong. Our voice is what they're trying to stop. Diagolon was one of the reasons why C11 exists. Rumble is also why C11 exists, because they were absolutely opening the door. It's also why Rumble left Canada,
Hmm.
because of C11. Anyways, it's quite the mess. C11, you add a 10 to it, you get C21. Are you happier with that one?
Not by any means. I'm gonna agree with Kevin with lots of the stuff that he talked about. I think that any level of government control is too much control. I'm a full-blown anarchist. I have been for a while. I've got a lot more vocal about my points of view recently talking about it, just because like I figured out fairly early on that the government does not have your best interests at heart. I started researching 9/11 back in high school, and that kind of took me to Alex Jones and looking at the subjects that they're talking about and understanding that 9/11 was an inside job and that the government did that to its own people. Then you look at things like Waco or the Tuskegee experiments. Like there's a history, MK Ultra. There's a history of the government doing heinous acts against its citizens, and this is supposed to be in the free West, right?
Mhm.
Um, so when you see lots of that stuff, your distrust for government just jumps right up. And it's you take the red pill, you leave the matrix, and then that's all you see. So
Yes.
whatever the government is saying that we need to do this, you need to do the exact opposite. So when they're saying we need to take your guns, you need to go out and buy guns. That's the end of the debate on that one. So Bill C-21, just more government or overreach, more garbage. Same with the OICs. Bill C-71. It's all the same thing. They want your guns. They want to be able to control what you have the ability to say, right? Attacking our freedom of speech, and then they take away your guns to be able so you can't defend against them when they come to do something worse to you, right? So I'm a constitutional carry advocate. I think that everybody should be able to have guns for self-defense. And again, like you see some of the stuff that's been going on lately, things are getting more violent. There's a couple months ago, there's just a random person who asked this guy to stop vaping near his kids, got stabbed in front of a Starbucks in Vancouver, right? This stuff happens. I'm not saying that if that person would have concealed carry would have prevented this. Maybe there was someone else, sitting close to in close proximity that could have prevented it. Maybe not, right? You can't really play fortune teller on that, but I would at least like the ability to be able to have the, um, again, the government respect my right to self defense, right? And I think that if any step towards that is a good idea, and what you're seeing with the way that the government's doing it, I mean, it's all part of the plan is taking away that right and the ability for people to protect themselves from threats, foreign and domestic.
Absolutely. And you say the same thing we hear a lot, that they're trying to take away our guns so that we don't fight against them. But I think it's even more than that. It's also so we don't feel safe. So we actually
Mhm.
rely on them even more. So it's not
Listen, the
necessarily.
government has a monopoly on violence, and we, for a very long time, have outsourced our security to the state, and that was a huge mistake, right? And this is happening absolutely everywhere, not just Canada. Canada is basically the crash test dummies for absolutely everything that the globalists want to do. It seems that if there's a globalist initiative, it happens in Canada first. So taking the guns is no mystery on what they want to do, but you're exactly right. They want us scared, they want us fearful, they want us locked in our homes, and they're going to take away every ability for us to actually feel safe and protected within our own country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sent out a tweet to our minister, Marco. Um, I provided him a lawn sign that he now just endorsed. You can go ahead and put a lawn sign that says "Warning: Gun-Free Zone." Go ahead and put it up. I would love to see him put that in front of his house. Let everybody know that he has no protection, and we'll see how safe he truly feels. And I think it's ridiculous. The people who are surrounded by security are the ones who are telling us we don't need security. And of course, that argument that gun laws are to protect us from criminals is ridiculous, because you're criminal by default because you don't follow law. So it's ridiculous. Should we be doing something about it? Should we all be registering to get guns? Should we be buying as many as we legally can at this point? Should we be doing things like that?
Uh, I usually, whenever the government announces any type of restrictions, I go out and buy a new gun. So, I tweet about it often. I tell pretty much everybody. I told my great aunt a couple of weeks ago. I said, "Well, go buy guns and ammunition," and she kind of chuckled, thought I was joking, and I wasn't. I recommend everybody go do that. The Canada's gun laws and the way that the whole marketplace in Canada is structured, especially with Bill C-21, the handgun freeze and all of that. Um, they're really just restricting anything, I would say, that's worth having from a self-defense standpoint. You can't have access to those, right? Criminals do, but not your citizens. So if what's going to basically be able to be purchased is 22s, limited to, probably they're going to reduce it down to 5 rounds probably. You'll have like shotguns that are probably going to be restricted to 3 or something silly, and so you're going to be very limited on what you're actually going to be able to do. And that is if you're actually able to use it for self-defense or to be able to fight a tyrannical government. Canada is screwed in lots of these ways that don't think enough people truly understand or are willing to do the research to actually listen to. I talk about guns an awful lot on my show.
Mhm.
I have a couple of really good episodes. I can't remember which ones, but if you scroll through my episode list, you'll probably come across some gun content. And I talk about all of this quite frequently, just because it is such an important topic that most people don't understand what is actually at stake here. And I really hope people do. It's not, it's very difficult. If you see the gun market, we pay about 50% more for guns than they do down in the United States. They have access to so much more, even with the ATF, creeping down their throats
Mhm.
and trying to stifle their gun rights. But realistically, buy guns and ammunition. It's a very, very important thing. When the lights go out and you have nothing else left, at least you can go hunt for food, right? Because
That's
if
right.
grocery stores aren't a thing, you can at least be able to feed your family for a certain amount of time before they come and take hunting rifles too, which they are. They're like everything, anything that you own, the government's going to come and take. David Lamenti has said very frequently that we do not have property rights in Canada. This government does not respect the charter, and I really don't think that anything's going to change on that front. They pretty much are just wheeling with the dictatorial power. They're not listening to people. You even have gun organizations, the CSAA, um, joining the Liberals in helping them fight this. Saskatchewan recently passed Bill 117, which, if you read it, reads like gun control. Their big thing is saying that, well, we're not going to we're going to require licenses for anybody that's going to take guns, and we're not going to issue those licenses. Well, it's only a matter of time before that's actually used. And you know, on the off chance that the NDP gets in, why did the NDP? So to back up, Bill's 117 is our basically Scott Moe's version of standing up against Ottawa as far as gun legislation. This was unanimously supported by every MLA in Saskatchewan, including our opposition, the NDP. Okay.
Mhm.
That was very, very concerning when the NDP supported it, because they are figuring that, hey, next time we're going to get empowered, we're going to be able to use this to grab guns, because the legislation in there reads exactly like gun control, not protecting
So
property
what's Mo
rights and
doing
gun
then?
ownership. It's pandering. It's honestly, it's very, very simple to put a catchy headline up there and say we're going to protect guns, and then put whatever you want in the legislation. Alberta is no different. In Alberta's Sovereignty Act, I believe it's Part 8, basically says that citizens can't sue the government over anything. That was snuck into a sovereignty bill, right? So people grasp on the fact that, well, they're saving our guns, or it's going to be sovereignty. It's going to be Saskatchewan and Alberta first, right? Realistically, what it is, it's just more government overreach, more government control under the guise that they're actually helping you. This is no different than what goes on in Ottawa. I believe that all of governments only look out for themselves. They're only looking to accumulate more power, and every single action that they take, especially if you see post-COVID era, that's where it's all geared towards. It's geared towards government control, not people empowering the people.
So where's our conservative government on this?
We don't have a conservative government in Canada. There isn't one conservative government in Canada.
Okay, let's talk about that. So what do we have? Do we have two liberal parties?
I think we have like
Liberal light and liberal?
yeah, any government in power in Canada is left of center. And I think the true mark of a conservative government would be their willingness to actually uphold the past, right? So if we have, say, a government that is unwilling to push back against what the shift left, then they're actually going along with it, right? If you look at liberal policy from 10 years ago, that's basically where the conservatives are at. There's this ratcheting effect right now of where they're only the conservative government, whether at a provincial or a federal level, are restricting the shift back right. I think that's fairly consistent right across the board.
Yeah, and I feel that too. I feel that I wasn't what you would call a far right at one point, but now I'm defined as a far right because I do agree with gun rights. I do agree with quite a few issues that were always normally a decent issue to be okay to support. But now it's even seeming like in the Conservative Party, gun ownership isn't something that they're protecting.
I mean, they are
What do you
doing a
think?
good job in the House of Commons. Rachel Dankow has actually been talking a lot about this, pushing back a lot. But the only reason they're doing that is because they know that they can't lose the West vote. They can't alienate the West enough that they're not going to vote for them. I mean, they're going to use every trick in the book to be able to, rule by fear and make the West vote for the Conservatives federally.
Mhm.
But they know that the gun issue is a huge issue out here, and they're not willing to sacrifice on that.
So you see the Sovereignty Act in Alberta more of a power grab for the provincial government, trying to pull it out of federal and keep it provincial, but not bring it all the way back down to the people. Is that kind of what I
Correct.
understood
Yeah.
you say?
Yeah, and it's the same thing here in Saskatchewan. There's a definite theme when you start looking at it, is that the government just wants to accumulate more power, and they're willing to do anything and grandstand and convince the general public who don't read the bills, who don't go through the specifics, and who aren't watching sessions in Parliament. I get it; it's boring and it takes a long time to actually be able to get the information there. But
Mhm.
the government today they're basically TikTok stars. They're using these short clips that only show one side asking questions and trying to answer them, and they're putting it on blast on social media, and that's the exposure that people get towards government. They'll do these press conferences where all the questions are pre-asked. You had Rachel
Mhm.
Notley kicking out Key and Bexy of Countersignal, who wasn't allowed to ask questions to her, even though she's saying we're opening our doors to the press, right? These people are liars and
Yeah.
manipulators, so you
Yeah.
can't expect them to do anything different. It doesn't matter. Like, what you see in public is exactly what is happening behind closed doors in sessions of Parliament.
Now, do you think it's just a superficial promise from Danielle Smith, or is it a good first step if we are bringing some of the power down from federal back to provincial? Is that at least a step in the right direction?
I would say it's a step in the right direction, but the bigger question is what powers are you actually granting that government, right? So, sure, at face value, removing powers from the federal government, I'm completely on board. I think that is a necessary first step, is to remove them from the federal government and at least giving a level of sovereignty to the provincial governments. And then let's take that down to municipal. Your municipal government should be your largest government, if we're going to run that system. But the big concern thing is what is actually in that legislation that they're passing, and what powers will it actually give them that's going to be any different from an overruling state. We just changed it from Canada to Alberta or Canada to Saskatchewan, and you still have that same authoritarian power there. That is concerning. I'm not 100% sold on Danielle Schmidt, to be completely honest. I think that lots of the stuff that she was willing to bend over backwards and flip-flop on, specifically Ukraine. One of her staffers probably said, hey, you can't talk bad about Ukraine because there's a huge Ukrainian voter base here, right? They're playing games of politics, and I truly don't like that. I would rather have someone have honesty and integrity running in government and not wanting the power, but doing it as a duty to their fellow man, rather than these people that just want a big-ass pension and to be able to not work and get travel paid for by the taxpayers and be able to say that they did something and had their name on the side of buildings. These people are egomaniacs. And I think Danielle Schmidt is no different. She's going to come off strong, say she's going to do lots of these things. And I think it's just going to be more of the same. If you look at what Kenny was saying, I have personal connections with Kenny. And if you see what he was saying, lots of it was the exact same rhetoric. And as soon as he got in, guess who started clamping down on lots of this stuff? Guess who didn't keep to his promises? Guess who locked down your province during COVID, right? It was conservative governments that went along with this all the way. So I don't think you can trust any of them. Politicians are slimy creatures to begin with. That's why they call it a swamp, right? If we're removing power from the federal government, the power should only go to the people, not the provinces. Is it a step in the right direction? To a certain extent,
maybe.
Yes.
If it's a step, then maybe. It's right now it's a conversation about a step. But we'll see if she makes it. I don't disagree with you. Okay, right. So Notley is a really, really bad option, and Danielle Schmidt is the better of the two evils. Two things that I'm not impressed with from her campaigning to the last few months. One was her commitment to attack and remove the partnership between Alberta Health Services and the World Economic Forum. They have a pretty active and promoted relationship on the Alberta Health Services website. That hasn't changed. Even with her change in leadership there, that hasn't changed. That partnership is still strong. And then the second one was she committed to and put a 3-month deadline on changing the Alberta Human Rights Act to include medical status as a protected ground so that you can't discriminate against. Meaning your vac status isn't a reason to fire you. You can't do that. It would be a protected ground. She backpedaled on that one quietly. It was just in a press conference, kind of a matter-of-factly saying, hey, this is more complicated than I thought, so we'll get back to it later. I'm sorry. I provided her the section she can add. It's not complicated at all. She absolutely could have put that one through the way she promised. I am wondering, and I'm maybe hoping, maybe a little bit naive of me, that she is doing some pandering for the election, and then she will open up the floodgates when she gets in.
That's the excuse that the conservative base is saying about Pierre Poilievre as well. They're saying he's doing all of this just to get elected, and he's going to flip-flop. The first goal of every politician is to get elected. The second goal is to get reelected. So if you think that strategy worked once, you think that they're not going to play the exact same card again. I think that's just ignorant thinking, and thinking that you're going to elect someone and then they're going to backtrack and do everything that you want. I think like you can look at even Scott Moe is doing things that are exactly similar. They're playing the woke game, and it's not going to work. He recently said that we're not going to be net zero by 2030 or 2035. We're going to be net zero by 2050. The right answer was we're not going to be net zero. We're not playing this woke game. We're not going to succumb to the fake and fabricated climate crisis, right? That is what you needed to say, Scott Moe, Danielle Schmidt, any of these other Pierre Poilievre, right? But they're all touting net zero. It doesn't matter what the issue is. They're going to only head left. And that's why we don't have a conservative government. So I have zero trust in politicians, but I have zero trust in politicians that are playing this woke game.
Fair enough. And that is a very interesting way to look at it. So you either have woke or woke later. So the Conservative Party is just doing it a little bit later. So here's a question to you: do you think they're getting that push from their base, or do you think that push is coming from above?
Both. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. So they're going to take their orders from the United Nations and the goals of sustainable development agenda 2030. That is the ultimate goal that all of the governments in the world are subscribing to right now, and they're pushing
Hmm.
all of these narratives. Now, when we take a look at their base, what I mean by that is you might have, say, true blue conservatives that are saying, they're going to get my guns, they're going to lower carbon costs, they're going to do all of this stuff, right? Or sorry, remove the carbon tax. They're doing all of this stuff. I support them in that. But realistically, what they're actually doing as far as they're seeking out information from their base is they're doing polling. These conservative governments, they're ruling by polling. So they're actually going into the areas that they want to capture to acquire a new base. That new base is actually dictating and pushing out the old base. Like I said before, the federal conservatives are only as strong on guns because they need to, because they know that they can't lose the strength of the West, but they're going to push left and poll people in the GTA and in Montreal and in Vancouver to be able to capture new voters. That is their base. It's not the old stock Canadians. It's not the people that actually put them in power that their base is now. Their base is the ones that they're willing to pander to in those areas to get new people to vote. And those people are all aligned with the goals of sustainable development because they've been groomed that way from the Liberal government or the NDP government in those big centers, right? And that's, I think, the shift that is actually more concerning, is it's the co-opt of this narrative. And once the base that they're trying to attract is on board with that, they're going to succumb to the pressures and not be willing to actually stand up when these big totalitarian controls come in place.
Now, some of the ways to kind of combat this is to become self-sufficient, to do your own thing, not rely on the government, not go for the handouts. If they're offering stuff, reject it. Um, and this is kind of what you're doing, right? You're not homeschooling, you're homesteading, you're building out some stuff, you're becoming self-sufficient. But not all Canadians can do that. There's a massive amount of Canadians who would never be able to do that, whether they have the ability or not. And I spoke to Kevin about this one, how do we start this new age where we start helping with the messaging, we start helping with the education, we start helping bring the next generation up a lot better than the last one. What do you think we can practically do under the current system that we have? Are you suggesting it needs to come down and we need to replace it? I don't think you're talking about a reset, but what is it you think we can practically do other than having shows like this and talking about it? What can we
Mhm.
practically do and start making this change?
So there's a couple of things that's a tough question to answer because there's lots of components to it. So, am I talking about a reset? Absolutely. Canadians aren't there. 99.9% aren't ready for a revolution. Um, so that, I believe, is off the table, even though that is the right solution. I do think we need our 1776. We never had it, and it's been to the detriment ever since. So that is one thing. Homeschooling, homesteading, get out of the cities, right? Those are cesspools for liberal disease,
Hmm.
and start homesteading. Get some chickens or whatnot, get a little small parcel of land. You really don't need much, even 10 to 20 acres, which isn't, though, at least in Saskatchewan, isn't all that expensive. It
Hmm.
might be harder to get your amenities there, but it's doable, right? Get out of the city, and homeschool your kids, do all of that stuff, and become ungovernable, right? That, I think, is a completely undervalued aspect. What you're doing is a great example, is trying to avoid all levels of government interference, right? Um, they can't. Why is there a big push to get rid of cash? Why do they want central bank digital currency? It's all about control. Being
Turn that off.
ungovernable.
That's why.
Well, yeah, exactly. They can completely control your ability to trade. So, if you have eggs and, I have cabbages or something like that I grow in my garden, right? Um, I don't have eggs because I don't have chickens. Well, I got cabbages and we can engage in free trade. We don't need money to be able to have that. Going back to a barter system, finding your friends, finding neighbors, right? I don't have the land for a cow, but I know local farmers that do, so I can buy my
Hmm.
meat from them. Start hunting. Uh, you know, even if they take guns, I got bows, right? So there's ways that you can go about doing certain things to put yourself ahead of the eight ball. Prepping is is another good example. I've done a whole prepping series on my podcast where I talk about specific things of what kind of just jumping off points, because it's a huge world once you start looking into prepping. But
Mhm.
that's another good thing, is being prepared. You have emergency rations, emergency water, an emergency plan, even with people that you're connected with, on if the power goes out, here's what we do. If the government comes for us, here's what we do. Have those plans, have those contacts. Now is a better time than ever is to find your friends. To go back to Jeremy McKenzie, like Diagonal, and that's what it's all about. It's finding your friends, finding like-minded people that you can connect with. I know there's people within the People's Party of Canada that view things very similar. It's finding your friends, finding people that you can trust. And in the day of the internet, and being able to talk to people right across Canada, there's good resources and access to information, shows and conversations like this, but you really got to do it on a local level. Okay.
Mhm.
You have to be connected on a local level. And I've tried really hard in my small town to be able to make connections like that, because it's very important. I live in a very liberal town, believe it or not,
Okay.
in southern Saskatchewan. So it's I'm literally the crazy person in town. I had a F Trudeau flag flying outside my house for the bulk of last year, until it started getting all ratty and I had to take it down. But yeah, it's those type of relationships that are really important. Find people that are like-minded, and that that what you can say things and talk about the vaccine without getting weird looks, right? It's
Mhm.
finding those types of people that have the right type of resource and the right type of resolve to be able to thwart whatever the government is going to throw at them.
No, fair enough. And you use the word vaccine, which it's an incorrect definition. So I guess
Yeah.
you're using the
Sorry. Yes.
post-COVID
It's
definition of vaccine there.
yes. The vaccine trademark, that one.
Yeah, it's trademarked that one. Yeah, the capital V vaccine. Yeah. Okay. So you interviewed Maxime, decent guy.
Mhm.
I was invited to join their party, and they offered me the seat for Yellowhead. I turned it down. I went independent. We can get into that in a sec. But you interviewed Maxime, but you also just said parties, and there's no Conservative Party. So how do you feel about PPC?
I don't think the PPC is conservative. I think they're just right of center, and I use the benchmark of what it was traditionally, because that's more important, especially when you're trying to benchmark conservatism. Um,
Hmm.
I think they're just on the right of center. I think they're actually center populist, even though Max is and I don't think it's a good idea. And I've talked to lots of people about this as well, is branding himself conservative just invites criticism from the existing Conservative Party. Um, I think that they're more libertarian than they are conservative.
Hmm.
And again, like they're the only so the way that it's broken down, I've heard this from within the party and by talking to candidates, where their base comes from. One
Hmm.
third new voters or haven't voted in a very long time, so no party identity. One third from the Conservative Party, and then one third from the other parties between the Bloc, the Greens, Liberals, and NDP. Okay, so to say that it's a conservative base is only one third true at best. Okay, and so I think Max branding the party as a conservative alternative, I don't think is necessarily the right way to attract people that actually want the centrist, populist, libertarian
Right.
ideals that he's actually pushing. Um, I had a really good conversation with him when he came on, and even that was a month and a half, 2 months ago. He's changed a lot, even in the last little bit that his the by-election was called. Some of the stuff that he's putting out, speaking of standing up for abortion more than any politician in Canada, talking about gender ideology, and I'm assuming there's going to be a couple of other drops that he's going to put. So if you are actually conservative and are looking for a conservative, not even an alternative, but an actual conservative, sure, the PPC is there for you. But I don't necessarily even think that they are true conservatives to the extent that when we're looking 10, 15 years in the past where the conservatives should still be planting their flag, um, there's no one there. Anybody right of Stalin would be considered far right,
Right.
and that's the narrative that we're seeing pushed right now.
And it's called the People's Party. And when I was in it, I was surrounded by people you would not normally associate with a Conservative Party at all. It was a diverse group here in Yellowhead. sexually as well. So it was very impressive to me that it was really the People's Party,
Mhm.
but
Well,
that's not the
I
messaging.
never ever voted like Kevin. I never ever voted. The first time I ever voted at any level, municipal, provincial, or federal, was in 2021, and that was for the People's Party of Canada. They made an anarchist want to vote.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that holds a lot of weight, but that's something to talk about too. I'm not a conservative. I would never ever identify as a conservative, but the People's Party made me vote for them.
And I thought I was impressed. Like it was just some of the stuff coming out of the headquarters. It was on the inside, talking with everybody. It's heavily run by old conservatives, so that's a bit of a problem. The new younger group in there, very energetic. They're doing well, but they're not experienced enough to really help. And then you also have the older conservative group, which is really pushing hard traditional conservative party type of things, like a whip, a party
Mhm.
platform. You can't veer from the platform, things like that. So that's what pushed me from. First, I was looking at the Conservative Party. Is there any hope for them? Can I get in there and help them? That was a no-go. Went to the PPC party, said, hey, you guys, you're fresh. You're doing a lot of the things I like. You're saying a lot of things that I like. But I felt it wasn't ready, and there was too much conservative blood still in the leadership there. Because I'm an independent. I don't really respond well to whips. Okay. I don't really respond well to being closed into this box that I am not a part of. So it made it difficult to continue with the PPC. However, they had a great showing here. They were second. They had 18% support in Yellowhead. Alberta
Wow.
definitely is open to looking at an alternative to the Conservative Party. This is why I feel this could be a good time for any independents out there / libertarian. What do you think about that? So what do you think about independent candidates not going with a party, taking the extremely hard road, starting off with zero support and working up? What do you think about that particular journey?
Well, I first want to say that if there's one riding that I hope gets flipped in the next election, it's Calgary Nose Hill, Michelle Rempel Garner. I think she's the worst conservative in the party. So if you guys can flip one seat for me, please make it that seat. But to address your question, I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword. I am a huge fan of giving people the choice and the voice, the representation that they want, the values that they want, the candidate that represents them, not necessarily even the party. Um, that's why I was blessed. I had a really, really solid candidate with Che Craik here in Saskatchewan. He finished behind the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberals in Saskatchewan, unfortunately. But he had the highest amount of percentage vote for the People's Party in Canada in Saskatchewan. So obviously there are pockets of where that needle is shifting. What an independent or a libertarian party candidate will bring. Unfortunately, I don't think enough to actually have a seat at the table, and that is, of course, a talking point of the Conservatives towards the People's Party of Canada. So I hate echoing that sentiment, but if you look at the Libertarian Party, they had like 1,700 votes nationally across Canada. Like, unfortunately, that party's going nowhere.
Mhm.
So even if they do have a solid candidate, it will kind of just add more voices or more competition in that, not to take away from people's voices of the representation that they want. I think the same thing with independence, right? It's unfortunately because those are the people that should get in, but that's just unfortunately not the way that our system works, or our system is able to facilitate and nurture that way. Money has a huge part to play in it when you're looking at even some things locally here in Saskatchewan. There's been a new party that's popped up pretty much out of nowhere, and it's got
Mhm.
backing of big money, and that honestly goes a long way. So if there is the right candidate who is independent that had the purse to be able to do it, maybe that's a different conversation. But lots of the people that are running in those ridings as independents or libertarian, part of the Libertarian Party, I think would actually probably do better as a People's Party candidate, just because at least you have a party that is national, that does have some backing, that does have some support to be able to just get your foot in the door that way. in Saskatchewan, our independent party or our independent candidates got 0.25%. That's not enough to actually do much in as far as shifting the conversation. I do support them 100%. But again, that being a double-edged sword, if you look at lots of the way that things are run in Europe, I think Italy's got something like 20 parties. What that is doing is just opening up the door for coalitions, and then you have people willing to compromise your values. So when you're voting and assigning your personal sovereignty to someone,
Mhm.
you know that they're just going to flip-flop. Like anybody that voted NDP federally should be very, very upset because you did not want the Liberals. That's why you voted NDP.
Right.
And what happened? There's a coalition, and they completely betrayed you. I feel that if you have more parties, that just opens it up for that. So there isn't a perfect system. That's why I'm an anarchist. That's why I say voting doesn't solve anything. It's the illusion of choice. You're heading towards a slaughterhouse and you get to take door A or door B. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And, I've made this analogy too. Voting, if I was to say, do you want to vote for Coke or do you want to vote for Pepsi? And that person will say, well, I want Sprite. And I'm saying, well, you're getting Coke, right? That's how voting works. Okay. If you think that, and again, could be viewed as incorrect, or it could be viewed as just my opinion. But when you're voting, you are giving your personal sovereignty away, and you're giving it to people that do not have your best interest at heart. And once they get in there, they have zero obligation to actually do anything for you. If you think that the government has your best interest at heart, I'm sorry that you're just willfully ignorant at that point. We can't be friends.
No, they should have our protection and safety at heart. I don't know about interest. We'll talk about that one another one time. But no, you made some good points there, and I would like to see Canada do something. We can't. Part of the problem is first past the post. Okay, the way we do our voting is part of the problem. It requires you to kind of pick one from the top two when you do that, and that's a challenge. We don't look at candidates; we look at parties. That's a challenge.
You vote color.
Right. We paint by color. We grew up that way. Now we vote by color. We also vote by pressure from family, because even if you do want to stand out, it's tough as well. But we also have what I think the PPC could do, and if they did do it, and they did do it quick, I do think they would have a substantial showing. I think the PPC party should team up with Bloc, get out of Quebec, let Bloc do Quebec and PPC do wherever else. They need a Western leader. So whether they have two leaders, to do something funky like that, because in Quebec they do that. They have parties where they have two leaders. If they did something like that with someone from the West, I think they would absolutely do well. And if they got rid of whips and platform, and they kept it as an independent open debate within the party, and they called that the new modern party, where the MPs and candidates aren't whipped under a platform, but we debate and we work on a platform to get a strong representation on a national level into the platform, then I believe they would actually be an incredibly attractive party to independent minds like mine and others who do want to bring the constituents' voice forward, but there isn't a party that supports that. If the PPC altered their party to encourage an independent minds and independent candidates within the party. So I could be a team player, but I can't be a team player under the strict rules in whipping that they currently offer. If they
I don't think
up,
that they are like in support of a whip. I mean, I think there is.
They have a whip.
Do they?
Oh yeah, they have a whip. I went through it.
Well, Max has been very outspoken that he will not have any that any MP elected within the People's Party will be able to vote their conscience or vote based on what their constituents actually want, which is the way that it should be.
Sure.
So
and
I don't know how hard that whip is going to be, and I think their party policy is one thing that is attracting some people to it. But I agree. Like when we are looking at the way that politics is run in Canada, we need a huge change up. So again, I think you're hitting on lots of points, and it could be valid, it could not be, but it needs to be different than what we got.
Yeah. And I can tell you, though, one of the straws I couldn't get past was Maxime would not provide me an exception about making my seat vulnerable to him as a selection. So this is before he decided on Manitoba. There was a problem within the PPC that Maxime would take the highest rated riding for himself.
Yeah.
And we had a good showing here. Yellowhead had a good showing, and Yellowhead was kind of soft looked at as one of those options for him. So that was a challenge for me because I couldn't be the candidate if he wanted to come and take it. And two, the party platform is not as malleable as Maxime has said. And I know that because I tried to challenge the platform itself. There was about 3 or 4 items on the platform where I didn't fully align. So I had a nice conversation with our district guy about that. And he made it clear. He says, look, don't veer from the platform. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to go out there and say anything that isn't part of the platform currently. So don't create new platform and don't veer from the current platform. So no, they do whip. Okay. And I do get it. I totally understand why they have to do that because they need to be unified. They can't really show a bunch of division within the party and that kind of stuff. However, I think Maxime, if he was brave enough to go ahead and have the internal candidate debates, he should announce as PPC is the first party to get rid of whips and we're doing internal debates. I think if he announced that, not only would we libertarians and centrists and people who are independent flock to that, I think true Canadians would actually find that appealing. Because if we educate Canadians on how the party works, especially around the whip and the national platform, and how the national platform is rooted in Quebec and Ontario, it's not rooted anywhere else. I think Canadians might actually wake up to that particular type of messaging. If there is a party out there that isn't whipping anybody, because the purpose of the whip is to get the MP to bring the message back to the people so that the people understand what the MP is going to be doing. And that should be completely reversed. It should be the people whip the MP who then brings it up to the party. So if Maxine came out and said, hey, guys, we are doing this now inside of our party, I would go back as a candidate in a heartbeat. And that's my open offer to them. So I have provided that offer to them. I had about 3
and
different
you
things.
share a lot of the similar criticism to lots of people that I have heard talk about similar topics within the People's Party of Canada. So you're not alone on that. I do think there's also that you can put forth private member bills as well, which aren't associated with the party once you are elected. So there are little ways to work around that system as well.
Sure.
I agree. Like, there could be lots of things that maybe Max is playing a little bit old school on that could be updated that would attract more people. Unfortunately, I think right now, it's pushing a boulder up a mountain,
It's
and
hard.
things are happening so quick to do lots of those things. Not saying that they won't in the future to be able to do that, but when you get called to snap election and don't know, and it's just a looming threat even at this point
Yes.
when we could get an election. You can't play those games. It honestly would just cause a rupture. I think the Conservatives know that as well. That's why they're playing status quo on lots of their stuff too. It's no mystery the way politics is. If you're paying attention, the politics is run. It's a dirty, greasy game that I don't want to be a part of, but unfortunately am and would be willing to step up if needed as a candidate. Because I want to fight for my family, and if there's no one that's going to do that at a level that I'm satisfied with, uh, unfortunately, that's where we have to play the game. I can't impose my will over people, and I don't want their will opposed over me. But when you're looking at um, the vast majority of people are wanting to play this game of servitude towards the state. That's the battle arena right now. I can't be an anarchist and say that this is where I need to fight because so many people aren't there. I'm literally one lone soldier trying to preach this type of stuff, it seems, so there's a correct strategy, but at what point in time is that strategy going to work out? And I think that is maybe the game that the People's Party is playing. And again, I think that the Conservatives say that we need to get people in and we need to change the party from the inside, which is not going to happen. But you do have an opportunity to do that with the People's Party. I think they're
True.
new enough. They're definitely small enough, especially if you're looking at the percentage of vote that they're getting and the polling, and that convinces a lot of people. But there's a real opportunity to get behind a solid movement if we're going to play that federal political game with the People's Party.
Absolutely. And what do you think if a couple conservatives like maybe Larry Brock or Leslie
Leslie Lewis.
Lewis Yeah. What if they left Conservative and joined PPC? Do you think that would be a big thing?
Um,
Do you think that would
I would
help?
be a fan of Leslyn Lewis. Lots of people that I'm connected with within the party say that they don't want her. She's very, very World Economic Forum and World Health Organization connected, and lots of the stuff that she's been preaching, like lots of them are. If it's in public or in the shadows, that's where they sit. Larry Brock, wore heels and pounce around during that committee. They're woke people. The Conservative Party is morally and intellectually corrupt, like Max said. So would I welcome it? Maybe. Will it be an easier avenue to get more MPs elected, more dissident voices in the House of Commons? But then you're kind of, again, the devil you know versus the devil you don't. I think that
Right.
it's kind of it could benefit. It could also drastically hurt the party as well. So I'm really torn on that. I do think that it would benefit from having an MP in there, barring Max getting elected or not. If someone did cross the floor, it would at least put the party with a seat in the House of Commons.
And what's your take on Tim Moen, the Liberal Party leader? Or sorry,
I had
the Libertarian Party leader.
So he is no longer with the party that way. He resigned as leader. I talked to him about a month ago about this stuff. He was trying to goat me into basically debating him. I think on the differences between the PPC and the Libertarian Party, and convince him on why he should switch. We agreed on an awful lot. I just think that he was kind of trying to set me up in a certain way to say certain things, which whatever, it's his show. Just on the difference between the PPC and the Libertarian, and try to convince him that way. I think that he makes a lot of fair points, fair criticisms. He was also like you. He was actually willing to give the keys to the kingdom over to Max when he was leader, and have him straight up take over the Libertarian Party. And obviously that wasn't the way that it went. I think he's a little, he's even said he's somewhat bitter about the way that it all went down with him and Max. But I think that Libertarian Party, even if there was an anarchist party, or Diagolon has DILF, so vote DILF. But any type of that type of mentality, I'm in full support of. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't want to have to vote. I don't want to have to assign my personal sovereignty over to someone. I don't want to, kiss someone's butt and be behest to what they're going to do for me. That's not the way that I want to live. So when we're looking at things and people that are having those types of voices, those types of conversations, and pushing that, call it an agenda, I'm in full support of you. Like, we're going to agree on 99% of the things, because we recognize collectively what the problem actually is. So I think, I got no beef with him. I no beef with the Libertarian Party. I just don't think it's going to get the traction that the People's Party does. And if you're looking for a libertarian alternative, there it is.
Well, he'll be on tomorrow, so we have him on for an hour tomorrow. So I'll talk to him bluntly about that, see what he's trying to do, and see how he can maybe try and help. It's more around Alberta election.
His criticism was because he's like, you're an anarchist. You on Twitter, you keep saying all of these anarchist things, but then all of a sudden you're flipping and supporting a party, So it was just kind of contradictory, which I completely get, and I've kind of addressed that a little bit. It's just people aren't ready for my level of governance that I feel suitable for Canadians, and so we have to play in this political arena that we're faced in right now.
Sometimes, exactly, 100%. Sometimes you got to play in the arena. You may not like snow, but you have to trench through it if you want to get from A to B. So you got to do what you got to do. But you got to maintain your beliefs and your ideology as well. Are you a religious guy?
I was raised Roman Catholic. I would not say that I am religious at all. Much like exploring alternative thoughts, when I was a teenager, I pushed back really hard on aspects of the church. And I would say, if you were to call, I would never say I was atheist. I would more say I'm just agnostic. I respect people's religious beliefs wholeheartedly. There's some that are a little bit more bombastic, might not be the best word, but as far as the way that they are trying to spread their religion, I think wokeism is actually a new religion as well. But yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm over religious. I do think that there's definitely probably something out there. I'm just not really willing to plant a flag in one camp or another on that front. Um, yeah, I don't really know how to describe that, but I'm just agnostic.
That's a perfect answer. It's a good answer. It's a right answer for you. How about, I notice here, anarchy and economics. So delve into your background in economics and your political views as an anarchist. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, for sure. So,
Mm.
yeah, I have a degree in economics. So it's um it's something I was always interested in. I remember in high school learning even just simple concepts of supply and demand. And then I got into university and I was taking business and I really had no direction. I told everybody I was getting a degree in football because that was the only thing I cared about. Um, and so, I was taking economic classes at the U of R and I came across just a really good prof. And that really shifted the tides in my interest. So much more than was previous. So that's why I went with a split major with business and economics instead, so that I could kind of get the best of both worlds. Um, it took some time. I love learning. I love that aspect of knowledge, but I hated the school system. The university system is completely awful. It doesn't nurture people. Education in general, actually, you can go boil that down to the younger years as well. But um, yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of school, so it took me a while to get through. But after getting through that, it's just always been an interest of mine, economics. So understanding, people when they hear the term the economy or economics, they don't actually understand what it actually is. They just think it's like the movement of money and free trade and blah blah blah. They don't actually understand lots of the underpinning of it. So if I was to tell your listeners what the definition of economics is, it's the study of people's choices when faced with resource scarcity. So when we have a limited amount of resources in a set market, it's looking at how people interact with one another. So there's lots of different components to economics rather than just simply the exchange of money, which most people would attribute it to. It is a very interesting subject. Another thing that lots of people get kind of twisted when we're looking at economics is there's basically a free market economy, which is also known as capitalism, which what we have um, isn't free market. It's crony capitalism, which is basically it's fascism, the collusion of state and government. So
Right.
we have that experiencing that. I'm a laissez-faire capitalist. That's why I would identify as an ANCAP, an anarcho-capitalist. Laissez-faire capitalism means hands off, let the market decide everything, which does have its pros and cons. So that's one end of the spectrum. Say that would be like the right-leaning side of it. The opposite, the opposing thing to that is a command economy where the government dictates absolutely everything. So that would be your levels of communism, socialism would be on that side of the spectrum, right? So those are often misconceptions, and when you hear, because and to kind of partner this with anarchy, the black flag comes in many colors, right? So the anarcho capitalist would be black and yellow, the anarcho communist would be black and red. And there's a constant battle between the two systems and saying that the ancoms aren't real capital or aren't real anarchists, and the ancaps aren't real anarchists either. And it's this back and forth. But if you look at the core structure of anarchy, which just simply means no rulers, it doesn't mean that there's no rules. It doesn't mean that it's just voluntary association. But what the people that are on the ANCOM side of the equation don't understand is that they need the state to be able to actually enact their will as communists. They attribute that factor towards the capitalist because they view that the government, with this crony capitalism, needs to facilitate trade. So there's a lot of misconceptions, and to kind of relay it back to anarchy, most people view as just chaos and violence and lawlessness. And sure, you can have that. I think there is a certain state of anarcho tyranny that is happening right now, which is just lack of order pushed by the government, where laws are meaningless because they're not enforced fairly or at all. Especially if you look at the way that Justin Trudeau has been ruling, right? So there's different schools of thought within anarchy, and lots of it realistically just comes down to at a base level is not wanting to be governed, not wanting to be ruled. and it's not like a form of rebellion thing. It's actually a true philosophy. And if you get down to the bare bones of anarchy, if you start reading someone like Ayn Rand, you're going to see she talks about the non-aggression principle, right? It's not always a violent revolution that needs to take place. It's becoming
Mhm.
ungovernable. It's not living as the state wants. It's having chickens, it's doing barter system, it's having connections based on voluntary association. Everybody when they win the lottery or dreams of winning the lottery, they're like, I'm gonna buy a Ferrari and I'm gonna buy a mansion and I'm gonna do this. No, I'm like, if I win the lottery, I'm buying like 500 acres of land, and I'm basically just, going to live my life and have like an anarchist compound where people, if they want to live that way, it has the resources and the means to be able to facilitate that, without the rule of government. So there's lots of ways to look at it. Basically, if you're to boil down anarchy, it's you don't speak for me, and I think that's kind of like a good baseline to kind of view it as. And there is to kind of piggyback on economics. There's lots of different schools of thought within economics. I'm a bigger fan of the Austrian model. So Hayek would be one person to look into, the Mises Institute, and what they've been talking about, and the learnings and teachings from Mises and stuff like that. Um, and then you look at the other side of Keynesian, which is complete market manipulation and control of interest rates and government control. So there's lots of different schools of thoughts and how people want to view this. And I would definitely recommend people learning more about both of those topics because they are important, anarchy and the economy, just because you have to really understand the system. And I think that reading those types of readings and works, I think will give people a true understanding and unbiased perspective towards how the government and the system actually operates.
So Kevin yesterday mentioned the 7 stages of an empire, and we pulled it up and we looked at it, and he felt that we were on 6 transitioning to 7, so we were headed towards collapse and destruction.
Hmm.
But one thing that we also noticed was the beginning stages of the ages are the pioneers and the discovery, and it kind of hit us that we have a dual economy kind of coming together, parallel economy kind of coming together. People like me are the modern pioneer. People like you are the modern pioneers. We're kind of starting the new age. So, with your economic background, what do you think about this parallel economy that's kind of materializing in the States and possibly up here as well? Do you think it's the right direction, or do you think it's like a divide and conquer? If we split up our economy into two sides, it's not actually good for anybody. What do you think about that?
Uh, as a laissez-faire capitalist, I would say that more competition in the marketplace would be better. So definitely having competing systems, and let the best one win. Um, but again, it goes back to that we're fighting the establishment right now. And when we're seeing this type of competing ideology, you have basically, I agree, one on the decline and one kind of one on the uptick. But when something, and you see this with the liberal government quite frequently, they're starting their death spiral, and a cornered beast is very, very dangerous. So what I think will happen is a mass amount of destruction and violence is going to take place. Maybe this new wave is going to be able to take over and take the scraps and build something better. Or maybe like I'm a huge advocate for um a national divorce. I think the West should get out of Canada. That would be, if you want to fix Canada, right? Or, well, it wouldn't fix Canada, it would fix the West. Get the West out, right? We do not need confederation. We are very, very strong. But again, it's woke conservatives that are leading this conversation here in the West. So I don't believe we can trust them by any means. But if the West was to separate, we'd be the most prosperous nation in the world. Okay, if we had the right people at the helm, if we want to look at it that way. But yeah, I think that there's definitely competing ideologies. Who's going to win? I don't know. I don't. I would be hard set to say that it's not going to come through mass civil unrest, whether that is good, bad, or otherwise. But when we're looking at things in aggregate, um, more voices at the table, being able to give people options, I think is always just a benefit. We've been tricked and hoodwinked into thinking that government monopolies are a good thing, and that comes from our very socialist past. Is when we're looking at, and Saskatchewan actually elected the first socialist government in Canada.
Mhm.
Lots of our ideology and the way that we are brought up is definitely geared towards that. And you see that within the 50% support of this left-leaning ideology between the Liberal Party and the NDP, which are outright socialists, right? And there's not enough people that are wanting to say, let's not play that system. Okay. You have conservative, I would say probably small c conservative strongholds in Saskatchewan and Alberta,
Mhm.
outside of the cities, yet those aren't translating to anything that's benefiting us here in the West. So if the
Correct.
West gets out, I think that is the best case scenario, and then you can let that competition and then the ideologies compete to where we would have a new structure that I think would be infinitely better than what we're faced with right now. Problem is there's not enough people that are actually spouting that. Even Maxime Bernier has said that as well. He said he'll respect if the West wants to leave, but he's not really out there supporting or offering options to be able to give the West more strength, other than saying that he's going to use aspects of the Constitution to force Quebec to build a pipeline and some other things. But true Western sovereignty needs to come from the provincial level, with the Independence Party of Alberta, Buffalo Party here in Saskatchewan. But I don't see them doing anything substantial. They're not out there talking and having these conversations. I've welcomed multiple Buffalo Party members or people within the party organization on my podcast, and I get ghosted. So it's like you have a huge advocate and voice who's trying to help you out and trying to grow my podcast so that that message gets spread,
Mhm.
and I'm just getting ignored. So it's like we're wanting humans almost seek out self-destructive behavior, and it seems that exists at a party level as well, where people that in organizations that should be on, keeping their foot on the gas and accelerating this thing are trying to play it safe for some odd reason.
And I think our election coming up on Monday might be the crossroads. So if Notley wins, I think you're going to see the separatist movement and independence movement really accelerate. It's going to put a big fire underneath it. I think it's really going to take off. If Danielle is able to stay, and I think it will quell the separatist movement for a bit and will really accelerate the sovereignty movement and see if we can actually really do something with that. So
Hmm.
this election might be the fork in the road for Canada. If Notley ends up winning, you're going to see a big pushback on that and likely lead to the conversation more around separation. Um, Question for you. What if PPC brought a West leader, had Maxime as the East leader, and tried to do a East-West, we can govern ourselves together but separate type of platform? Do you think that would resonate with the West a little bit?
Well, I would definitely say so. I was a person, because I grew up in the 90s, and I saw Chrétien, and I just heard it so frequently here about the distaste for Quebec politicians here. So
Mhm.
it makes sense, and lots of people don't like Max strictly for that reason. He doesn't speak good
100%
enough
true.
English. He's from Quebec, blah blah blah, all of this stuff. I'm like, listen to what he's saying, not with the accent, right? He's hitting on all of the right things that I think lots of people can get behind, right? Um, but they're just blinded by this hatred of French, which I get. It's cultural disdain from back
It's
before
different than that.
Confederation.
Yeah, I'm
So
French, and I spent a lot of time in the East, out in Quebec as well. It's a little bit different than that. Albertans have heard the news so many times, the audio clips so many times out of Quebec leadership that we're dirty, oily, gross
mhm,
people. And
yes.
hearing that accent so many times, played so many times, it's burned into us out here now. And
No,
it's not
I
fair. It's
agree.
not fair, but it's the media that's done that. It's Ottawa that's it's making that separation or that division happen.
100%. So I think Max is the right leader, but I understand why people out here can't get behind him for that reason. You're completely correct. So would it be a good strategic decision to have him step aside, and have someone from the West, Kelly Lorenz, the Western Lieutenant,
Right?
military vet,
Kelly's pretty cool.
might be a good option. I've said this before recently since the by-election has been called. It's a tipping point. If Max doesn't get elected, I think the party's done, to be completely honest.
Okay.
I don't think that it could recover. people are saying if he loses, he needs to resign as leader. So does that play out? Maybe. Maybe he takes like executive director role and is able to kind of steer the party and be that type of leader, and then actually have say Kelly as that, or it could go the other way. He wins his seat and sparks kind of that populist movement because he does have a seat at the table and he is suggesting the right things that, once he gets in the House of Commons and starts exposing lots of this stuff, maybe it resonates with more people because he's on that stage. I don't know. I could be swayed either way, honestly, on what way that would benefit, say, the party in that stance. But I guarantee you that's why a lot of people don't get behind that. But I would like to remind your listeners that you're not voting for Max. I understand how our system works, but
Yeah.
you're voting for your MP, right? Max might not win his seat, and he's not going to be leader forever, but your MP might be your guy for a while, your guy or girl for a while, right? So that's the person that you're actually voting for. Don't get caught up in the color. Don't get caught up in the leader. It has a point to play, but put the right person, whether it's PPC or otherwise, that you think is going to represent your values and going to be the best person for that job. These people work for you. People forget that the politicians are supposed to work for the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so, to kind of tangent on this, when you are given a right that is supposed to be upheld by our government, which isn't, you're also assigned a responsibility with that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what people are seeing is that I have the right to vote. I'm 18 years old. I'm going to go into a voting booth and check a box, right? They view that as a right. What they don't understand is that you have a responsibility, not just to yourself, but to every single other Canadian, to put
Correct.
the right person for that position in there. Okay. So if people start looking at voting as a right, but voting as a responsibility, doing your research, meeting every single candidate. I know for when a general election is called, I'm going to reach out to every single one of the candidates running in my riding and going to try to have them on the podcast to be able to give them a platform to explain the ideas. I'm
Yeah.
partisan. I'm saying I'm PPC. I'm not voting for you, right? But I want to give them the ability and the platform to be able to say, here's my ideas and here's what I believe, and give people the ability to actually choose, because that's not what's going on. And it's kind of been that way from the start. It's been designed like that, to have low information voters choose who actually gets to represent the people.
And I think it's actually Maxime's job to educate us on that. I think Maxime's in a position where he could push that message and tell us exactly how the system works by modifying his party to be a little bit different and modern. And if he just took that as his talking point, I think he not only would get more support out of the West, even though he's French, because one thing that we are more passionate about than our distaste for the French language and how they talk about us is independence. We absolutely are strong independents over here. So if Maxime convinced us and provided us a party that was providing independent candidates, people who were going to work for the constituents, and reminded Canadians how it's supposed to work, I think that would be a winning formula for him. I don't even think he would have to need a co-leader like with Kelly or something. I think that would be enough for at least the people around here to really strongly look at the PBC, because I would join at that point. I would absolutely happily go.
You should reach out to Kelly and have this conversation either on the podcast or even just privately, because I think you're bringing up lots of good points, fair criticism of the party. I think that could actually benefit the conversation. So try to reach out to Kelly. I can put you in touch. I have his contact info if you're wanting, and can
Please
kind of
do.
make that
Yes.
connection. Yeah, for sure. I'll send you that offline, but because that would be a good conversation as well. Even just in general. He's a very smart guy, knows exactly what's kind of the needs of the West and how the PPC can facilitate that. So that might be a good conversation to have on here.
Wonderful. And yeah, I'll use your contact. I'll use my contacts. We'll try and get them on, because I'm sure it would be at least a compelling conversation to have, because these were my grievances on why I didn't stick around. The rest of the party, I was good to go. I was really good to go. It was just a few pieces that I think need to be addressed. And Maxime, if he loses his seat, he still has what's called the leader clause in his candidate contracts, which means he can go and have an election for any riding that he wants to go and take. And that was a
Yeah.
sticking point for me. Like, if I did become a strong candidate, Yellowhead was very clearly leaning towards the PPC. Right before the election, I might lose that seat. And that was clearly articulated to me that that particular thing cannot be excluded out of the contract. So
Yeah.
that didn't make me comfortable. I couldn't go around talking to my neighbors saying, I'll represent you, earn their vote, and then Maxime pops in last
Yeah.
minute.
It's definitely a problem. It's not just unique to the PPC either.
No, that's a
Yeah.
party thing. That's a party thing. But I think Maxine, if he came out and said, look, I don't do that. We removed that. We removed whips, and we are very, very strong on debating inside the party for coast to coast coverage of the constituents. I think he would get a tremendous amount of support in the West. So much so that he would have to be considered for a coalition in the next government, because they would need his support. I know coalition isn't a thing that you're happy about, but if PPC is part of a coalition with the Conservative Party, that might be something that helps us moving forward, as opposed to Liberal NDP, which is nothing but bad news for us.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
cool.
that's one goal, is to be able to control that seat of power, exactly the way that Jagmeet is ruling in Ottawa. He is actually
Yep.
in more control than Trudeau at this point in time, believe it or not.
Yep, he's the most powerful Canadian. He's the most powerful Canadian right now, no doubt. And I actually had this debate on Twitter just this morning, where I put out a message to Albertans reminding them that they're not really voting for Notley, they're voting for Singh. So if they put Notley in, they're getting Singh's minion in there. And somebody pushed me back and he says, hey, NDP is not the leader on the federal level. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, dude, are you not aware of this deal that they have?
Yeah.
No, I think Singh is the most powerful Canadian right now. If he did his job correctly, which the people voted him in for, we would have had an election by now. We would absolutely have gone to the polls. We would have removed the Liberal government. And a lot of people would have applauded Singh for that. But they grew up together in a Young Leaders Global program out of the WF. They're old buddies. This is exactly what they were trying to do, so we got what they were trying to do. I think they've been successful at their agenda thus far, but Canadians haven't been successful at identifying that there is an agenda that we need to work against.
Absolutely.
All right, Zach. Well, this has been awesome. I totally want to do this again with you at some point.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can do something like we're doing with Kevin, where once a week, a Saskatchewan update, because he's going to be doing the Quebec update for Canada. But maybe we can talk after the election again and see where Alberta has started to go. Did we do UPC? Are we going to retry that NDP experiment again? That's going to be coming up on Monday, so I'm excited about that. Would you have any closing remarks for our listeners? Let them know more about your podcast, where to find it, and if you have anything else going on, let them know about it.
Yeah, you can find me Schmidt House Podcast. I would recommend you guys go to Rumble. I do post exclusive content there called Shorts, so you can check out a lot spicier topics. I really get into it. I pull no punches there, and that's why I like using Rumble, is because I do have those protections that YouTube would punish me for. So check me out there. You can find me on Twitter, Schmidt_Zach. Again, lots of I don't pull punches on Twitter. I stopped caring a while ago. But yeah, I am going to be doing, I've started doing live streams. So I'm going to be doing, hopefully there's a debate for Portage Lisgar between the Brendan Leslie and Maxime Bernier. I would love to cover that on a live stream, kind of do like a watch party type thing. And I'm also going to be doing election coverage on the night of the June 19th to be able to showcase this stuff. I kind of modeled it after the way that like Stephen Crowder or Tim Pool does their kind of coverage that way. I found that there's nobody really doing that on like a smaller scale.
Well, I'm doing that Monday for our election. So if you want to join Monday night, yeah, we're doing panel. We're doing.
I'm on vacation next week, so unfortunately, I would normally have said yes. But yeah, like there's other than like True North and Rebel News, which are still kind of those bigger outlets, there's nobody small that's kind of doing that style. So it's good that you are. I'm definitely wanting to get more into it, doing it that way, as those type of watch party things. I think it's interesting and enjoyable to watch that type of stuff. But yeah, that's kind of where you can find me. As far as a message to your listeners, you know, I'm assuming most of them are Alberta. Just really,
no, they're actually mostly Ontario, to be honest.
Oh, Ontario. Okay. Well, this kind of goes without saying, is like, and I highlighted this before. You know, politics is definitely taking over lots of the conversation here. And when we're looking at political solutions, if people want to play that game, make sure you're putting the right person in there that has your best interests at heart. We know that the government doesn't, but at least that person that you have their phone number, you can go to their office in your within your riding, and actually talk to them. Make sure that they're the right person for your job before you're assigning your personal sovereignty away to someone. And if you're not looking for a political solution, definitely explore some things on anarchy. If you're looking for some places to get started, you can reach out to me. I can kind of steer you in the right direction. The Anatomy of the State, that book right over here behind me, definitely a good place to start. You can look into people like Ayn Rand, Michael Malice. He's a popular
Yeah,
podcaster
he's
as
pretty
well.
cool.
Been on Rogan a bunch. He's fantastic. He's like the face of modern anarchy. So you can look into some of that stuff as
His
well.
podcast, You're Welcome, is pretty amazing. He goes really deep.
Absolutely. So that's kind of it from me. I really do appreciate you having me on, Jason. It was fantastic. I'm happy to do it anytime. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and stay free.
My pleasure. And if you want me to come on to one of yours, talk a bit maybe about an independent candidate, what I have to go through to be one, what kind of hoops I have to jump through, my experience with the PPC, and then maybe a recap of the Alberta election. There's lots of things we can talk about. And on your show, I could be a little bit more free, right? It'll be not a morning show, and I'll keep my kids out of the room for the Rumble show. But happy to go down that road with you if you find some value in that.
Absolutely, anytime. Let's connect and we can find a date. Maybe I'm kind of booked up for June. June's going to be a very busy month, and maybe in July though.
I'm around. I'll be here fighting for us too.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Zach.
Take care.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. That was Zach Schmidt. Go check out his Rumble podcast. You can find him. I put it into the description of the show. It will be on Discord as well. But go check him out. He is doing what we're doing as well, but he started a lot sooner than I did, and he's been building up a great audience. Yes, Padge, absolutely. Thanks for joining us today, Zach. That was wonderful, and no doubt we'll do it again. There's a couple of topics I didn't get to, only because we ran out of time. I wanted to spend a little bit more time around his homestead and what he's doing, but that could be another episode, maybe, where we share our homestead, he shares his homestead, and others. I'm still working on trying to get Clyde to do something to respond to me. We're connected on Twitter, but he's a super busy guy, hasn't gone back to me. But I would totally like to try and set up a coast-to-coast podcaster where we're all pushing and promoting each other. So we got Clyde, we got me, we've got Zach, we've got we even have Kevin out in Quebec. So there might be something brewing here. And if you're out in the East Coast, I know I do have some East Coast listeners, maybe it's time for a podcast from Nova Scotia, something out in the PEI. But let's try and go coast to coast Canadians, having conversation. This is the most valuable tool we have today. This is something we can do. And as like Zach said, you get a $30 microphone. I think this was like 35, so he's on top of that. Use your webcam. If you have an old DSLR, buy the part to hook it up. Do what you can, but get your voice out there. And I know that there's several listeners in here I think would make an excellent show. Ellen, I'm looking at you. It would make an excellent show out of Manitoba. All righty. Thank you very much, Railroad, for showing up. Clay was here. Ellen was here. Prairie was here. Scott, the mayor of Alexandria, was here. We had a great showing today, and we had a great show. Okay, Jay. Now it's the last few minutes. You going to sing to us? Good morning. Good morning. Is that what you're looking for, Railroaded? You know I love you. I'll do almost anything you ask me for. Railroad's having a good time. And then Charlie C.S., you're in the East. You got time for a podcast too. Get your mic on. I think Charlie mentioned that, yes, she might be doing something too. And Green Thumbs might be doing something too. And Stunt, I think, mentioned he was going to do a full-time show as well. Boy, would that be amazing if those were all able to line up and we could have, Canadian voices in the background all day long, hours and hours of the true information and the true push. So let's see if we can encourage them to keep going with that plan. And what do we have here? Prairie. Alan is in Manitoba too. Is Alan in Manitoba or Eastern Ontario? I keep messing that up, Alan. But in either case, maybe you and Prairie can connect, get a show going. We'll see. We'll see. And Ella, much love to you. Know I love you, Railroaded. I had to find a production assistant who's also named Ali. That's how much I loved you. All right. So yeah, I got Ali. He's helping, and I got you too. It's awesome. Yeah, I'm in Ontario. Yeah, I think Eastern Ontario, maybe even the Barrie area, if I recall correctly. There. 1 minute to go. Ali's reminding me. I see Mr. Green thumped Ottawa the other day on the YouTube streets. Yeah, so let's. I know he's in my Discord, so Mr. Green Thumb, I know this is an early show for you, but maybe you could be the show that comes after. Let us know. And then Prairie, yeah, you're in Manitoba. So maybe Prairie, you can do something in Manitoba, Ellen in Ontario. We got Kevin in Quebec. We basically have BC all the way to Quebec covered if we could do that. All right, Ali, thank you very much for the reminder. I got 20 seconds to go. So let's go ahead and clean up the screen and say goodbye. Everybody, another lovely episode. Thank you for getting up early with me and giving Zach the chance to say hi. We loved his conversation, and this is the kind of stuff that we're going to continue to bring to you. So thank you all very much. You know I love you, and make sure that you remember, God bless.